on the first Monday ya March 1973, morning hours around 9-10 a.m., there was a meeting convened at Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's home in Ishaweri. It was a meeting called by Kenya Bus Owners Association. The initial investors were the Kenya transport sector, like formalized bus transport. Before that, people were moving around in cows. But this day, walikomeita mkutano wanataka Mzee Jomo Kenyatta kuji because they are burning issue. Something is cropping up na inawasumbua. Like the matatus, this is where the matatus zimeanza kukuja and they are eating into their profits. This is a story about how a whole industry was born on a table of gatekeeping na jealousy. Now, his story iko very interesting twists and turns, so please indulge me. Ni indulge me ama ni I indulge you. Senior counsel Mukaya sijui atasema ni I indulge you ama indulge me. Sengine kizungu inachanganga mtu. But this is basically a setup ya how what I would call jealousy and to some extent linear thinking gave birth to a whole industry that changed the game, and the politics that populism versus strategy vile zili affect the Kenya transport sector. It's a very, very interesting story, and it's been adapted from one of the finest books by a Kenyan author. Please welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Kingori, and our guest for this episode is the host. Now, the convener of this meeting was jamaa anaitwa Jogo Kimakia. Yeye alikuwa na mabasi 15 manze, Unidon, in 1972, having 15 buses plying different routes in Kenya. That's someone who's pulling serious weight. And this meeting was a meeting of serious investors in the Kenyan transport industry, among the pioneers. There's a different story about how the Meru County plays a very big role in the evolution of the Kenya transport sector, but let's stick to buses and matatus for this particular one. So now, Jogo Kimakia ako na mabasi 15, and kwa hii meeting, which we can say is a meeting of equals, our author writes that mwenye alikuwa hapa na basi tatu was struggling to fit in. So hii ni meeting ya Madon. First of all, before we talk about the jealousy in this conversation, kwa sababu they are asked to Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was to ban matatus. Kwa sababu the matatus do not have TLB, they are driving without driving licenses, na hakuna order na wanaiba, as in ni kama wanaiba biashara. So technically in 1972, wase wa matatu as we know them were then do the guys. So if you do the mathematics correctly, so we can tabulate tuseme future watu wa Nduthi ndio watakuwa wase wa matatu. So that's just a hypothesis. No disrespect to watu wa Nduthi, tunawapenda sana. This just for context. Let's give credit where credit is due. How watu walitoa industry ya Kenya mbali by making sure wame invest at the right time. They made movement easier at the time. Remember, before that, people were moving around in cows. Like cows were the main means of transport, mode of transport. Ng'ombe. Picture that. Huyo mrembo anaingia na ng'ombe ya saa 10. Right? Like, think about it. It's like calling for an Uber and then someone shows up with a cow. These people made sure that we don't move around in cows anymore. First movers, they benefited, of course, but they did what they had to do. So what they wanted from the president was for Mzee Jomo Kenyatta to ban hizo matatus, and if he had said yes, we'd never have heard of matatus. And when Mzee Jomo Kenyatta heard the petition, his reaction was rather interesting. Aliangalia the proposals that from the notes that had been written for him. Akawambia, ai wadau, there is so much opportunity in this country. Everybody must eat. Alafu akishasema everybody must eat, aliambia the bus owners one interesting thing. Aliwaambia, it's either you find a way to coexist with the matatu guys, ama you sell your buses and buy matatus. Ebu think about that for a bit. Like, our to mabasi, they had the resources. Like, if they wanted to finish the matatu guys, then they would have just sold the buses by the and bought more matatus and operated without rules. But then again, wao walikuwa naangalia wanataka kuzima matatus. But then again, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's reaction, it looks like I thought he had processed for 5 minutes, but I think he had thought about this. He knew what these people were coming to ask of him. And akapiga hesabu, because as you later come to learn in the analysis, is that it was a populist move. When he says everybody must eat, aliangalia ni wapi kuna watu wengi sana in the best interest of the people then, and I'm using quotes hapa very loosely, aka decide Everybody must eat. Now this akiwaambia you guys either sell your buses or eat matatus, manzi walikuwa wamekuja na token. They had come with a token, a donation to Gatundu Hospital. It has been a very controversial thing, but that's a story for another day. Walikuwa wamekuja na a takriban 3,500 shillings. 3,500 adjusted to inflation looks like, no, before adjusting to inflation, it looks like a very small amount of money, but 3,500, if you adjust it to inflation, it plays around 800,000 Kenya shillings to around 3.5 million Kenya shillings. Engineer Kiruki anasema this money that could have bought someone a brand new car from a showroom. So alisosi hiyo do yao ya donation, akawaambia nyi pia kwendeni huko. And then now akasema he formally recognized matatus as an alternative means of transport to the buses. And now hii kitu ina set the stage for politics in the transport sector like never before. But one particular thing that interests me about history yote ya the evolution of the transport system ni someone who was, I believe he was represented among this in this meeting. He was among the investors. Now he represents a very interesting theme. Hii kitu watu wanasemanga, it is the C students who employ the A students. One of the biggest Matatu investors one of the biggest investors in the transport sector in Kenya was a class 5 dropout. How did he do it? Now, one of the investors kwa the Kenya Buses Association, akona matatu zinabeba pande ya Meru. At this time ni 1972, but let's track back. He's born ni jamaa anaitwa Marete, and his investment kwa basi zake in this 1972 meeting ni basi zinaitwa Kamawe. Why Kamawe? Class 5 dropout, turudi nyuma kidogo, born in 1926. Marete ameenda shule akafika class 5, and then one day he decides to quit because he had an altercation with the headmaster. Kwa nini? Man's just gotten circumcised, alafu akupenda vile hajatritiwa na decorum, because apparently in those days teachers used to request people to carry cow dung na ash ya kucement classes, and then he and his friend who walikuwa undergo circumcision pamoja did not carry because they are now men, they are not boys. So wakati viboko zilikuwa zinalia, he saw the feedback from the strokes ya his friend. He just woke up, dusted his shorts, akaenda mtaa. And that was the last time watu wanasema he was seen in school. People assume that someone who drops out from school is a fool. I think no. The story of Marete changes this perspective kabisa, because he leaves school in standard 5. He goes to start crushing, crushing ballast, kokoto. And he and his brother wanna crush around 2 tons. And at this time, I think this is a concept of timing, around this time, the Meru town is building, so there's demand for kokoto. So now akapiga kokoto, akiuza, akasave, and in the 1960s, he opens his first restaurant. So from his restaurant, saves kidogo, he buys his first truck, lorry to deliver tea leaves na nini. And again, he saves money and buys a bus. So now something interesting about the bus he buys. In fact, he brands it Kamawe because of the legacy ya kugonga kokoto. So now he buys the bus, and the story is written that on their way from Nairobi, wakati walitoka kuchukua basi yao, they passed by Kangaroo School in Embu to show it off to a cousin. So in my mind, I'm like, is this a cousin who was alibaki shule when he was dropping out, but him being outside, this is how much he has achieved. Okay? And the moral of the story, kwa how much he had achieved by the time he's buying one bus, the first bus, ni wealth can be gotten everywhere, even from volcanic rock. And those are the words of Engineer Kiruki Mwithimbu, who is the author of one of the finest books by a Kenyan author. Please grab yourself a copy of this book from the Nuria store, and I'll let you know why. This is, as in, I think in another world, he would have made one of the best comedians. Unaona vile tunasemanga stories za jaba? Akona creme de la creme story za jaba from this story. Not that the book ni stories za jaba, but vile zile textbook stories za jaba zimeandikwa kwa history to make your read very interesting. For example, when Meru mabasi zimeanza kuingia, there was debates among people. Unajua, in Meru, in a place like Meru, gender is such a big deal. So there was always a debate. Yeah, hizi magari, are they male or female? And no one could actually really answer the question until one day a bus breaks down kwa barabara and a herder decided to commit, aangalie mpaka itengenezwe iishe. And when he looked, akaangalia vizuri chini ya hiyo bus, when they pulled a shaft from underneath, like the mechanics wakitengeneza, akasema bas, amejua these vehicles are male. And like typical stories za Java, move to another story, and there's so many of those stories kwa hii kitabu, and they are very well written. Yeah, when people so wameanza kuona basi, like the big cars, siku moja someone sees a Volkswagen Beetle imepita, hua. In fact, he was very concerned, akasema, if this thing can move this fast when it's so young, what if it grows up, manzi? So as in, alikuwa anajua hii kitu siku moja itagrow ikuwe basi, na hii ndio bio inaenda nayo. Yani hizi iko na nyama mingi sana, like I feel inaniita to level. Kama there was a time where KBS, the Kenya Bus Service, because we are gonna get to that, and you can also get the full story from the book. Kenya Bus Service had a special privilege ya kubeba excess passengers, like they would carry double the capacity. Kama capacity ni 50, they could carry 100. So when matatus zilikuja zikakuwa formally recognized, and now they could have clout to negotiate with the government, wakaanza kusema kama KBS wanabeba excess, hata sisi tunataka kubeba excess. But then it's interesting when you go back in time, uangalie transport sector ya Kenya, manzi, how people used to pull risky moves. There was a time, manzi, kupata kiti was such a privilege. Like sai, gone are the days, yeah, ati mpaka kwa exam tulikuwa tunaulizwa ati, do you give up your seat for an old person, a pregnant person, or a child? Those are things of the past. But kitambo, standing kwa matatu, mpaka wasi walikuwa wanafinyana. And then, of course, there were accidents. But apparently, ukiingia kwa maushago, the accidents hazikuwa mingi because as much as munabeba excess, the roads are not so good. The roads are so bad that you can't run, ama you can't sikia tiraina, mwezi kimbia, naongea Kiswahili, you can't drive at speeds that would cause accidents. But they used to happen kwa mahali barabara ziko. So there was a time in this country where good roads were a bad thing. But then that changed, tukakuwa na good roads, and then rules came about and things changed. Now, let me not digress. Marete, aka Kamawe. Now, Marete dropping out in Standard 5 to become one of the earliest investors in the Matatu business helps us solve one thing. Hii kitu ya mtu wa kumaliza shule, in my opinion, does not qualify the idea ya ati education is not important. I think we need to redefine what education really means. Because for me, of course, the account is he was a very good student in math. And this later came in handy in his accounting to become as in his accounting in the Matatu business. But then again, it also gives us the context here, the path here, what was for you is for you. It's a very interesting area to explore because had he stayed in school, as Engineer Kiruki Mudhimbu writes, he would have become a teacher. Like angesoma, succeed, akwe mwalimu. So what is the standard? Does education level the playing field? Ama working hard na working smart? Because it's a very, very thin area to explore, but this story of the Matatu transport industry, iko na very interesting threads to follow, because for him, he started the restaurant, akapivot into the Matatu business. Unaona hii Matatu business, when buses zilianza kulimwa vizuri kabisa na Matatu, aliondokea mapema, then he moved into real estate in Meru na Nanyuki, and he did very well in Matatu. So inamaanisha he was diverse, na hiyo education kidogo yenye mtu alikuwa anaweza assume he was still able to make both moves once he understands industry. And this is the place where I believe I would like to bring in the quote, we now complain about unemployment, and I think on the debate of nani aliacha shule mapema, why the people who go technical versus the people who graduate, the people who are technical tend to succeed more. Linjiro said something very profound when it came when he featured in one of our episodes.
As a father, as a grandfather, I feel like crying most of the time when I see a young girl who is 25 years old or thereabouts, coming to look for a job here or elsewhere with a degree in conflict resolution and security studies. A degree in history. She can recite the voyage of Vasco da Gama, 1498, Cape of Good Hope. He went to India, conquered Goa.
Yes.
Ferdinand Magellan, Amerigo Vespucci. America is named after Amerigo Vespucci, Christopher Columbus, and that kind of stuff. And now he's going to look for a job
in a restaurant,
hotel,
in a resort.
in a hotel.
Yeah.
And then we are given 3 things. One, useless papers. Number 2, empty pride. And number 3, hopelessness. And if you wish, depression.
Now, this meeting in 1972 changes one level of the game for the Matatu business. But then something else happens. In 1972, in August, there's a terrorist organization called Black September that attacked Israeli hostages in Munich, Germany. And it was a very sad and tragic event because when the German special forces came to rescue the Israeli hostages, it ended up killing all the hostages. The operation ended up killing all the hostages. A very sad story. So now there was a split. There was the Western countries zenye zilikuwa zinastand in solidarity na Israel, and then there were the oil-producing countries zenye zilikuwa zinastand na Palestine, where the said terrorist organization is said to have come from. Now, when this solidarity na division ilitokea, Saudi Arabia, which was a leading oil producer, decided to close their taps, wafunge mafuta, and this created a proper oil shortage. So now, here's an interesting thing. Buses, due to the oil shortage, watu wa mabasi, walijifanyia disservice moja. They started hiking fares by passing, ideally, watu wa biashara, they pass the cost to the consumer. Matatus decided to stick to the 30 cents they were charging kama mafuta imepanda ama ijapanda. And this was very interesting to read, that there was a time that Matatu stood in solidarity with Kenyans when it comes to fare hikes. Lakini sahi it's the other way around, watu wanasemanga ni Matatu ndio inakuanga ya kwanza kufinya watu, but they've built the brand over time. But at this particular time, Matatu stuck with the 30 cents. And again, we heard Honorable Kimani Ngunjiri wa Bahati MP akitu explain here on the show how the name Matatu actually came about, and it has been actually corroborated by Engineer Kiroki Mwidhembu in his book Matatu Madness.
Unajua jina madhili ilikuja wapi? Because it was 30 cents. Madhili. Hiyo
ndio inaanza sasa. Alafu
ukibeba mtu anakulipa, inaitwa madhili kwa sababu unalipa 10 cents tatu. That's why it was called madhili.
Matatu ikakuja
Yes, na hiyo haukukuta King'ori. Ulikuta 10 cents ikiwa na shimo. Ulikuta 5 cents ikiwa na shimo. That time it was now coming ending to that now. Madhili hiyo.
So hiyo ndio ilikuwa fare ya a specific route ama
zote zilikuwa. Bali unapewa ni madhili ni 30 cents anywhere. Kama utachukua katikati, kama utachukua wapi ni 30 cents. Na hiyo sasa hapo naye Grogon. Ilikuwa iko shida. Jina wa hair. Unajua itoka wapi? Kwa sababu mnapangana namna hii mkifanya nini? Mkibeba. Mnapangana namna hii mkibeba. So hakuna control, hakuna parking. So polisi ikionekana mnasema mwahea. Hiyo ndio iliitwa mwahea. Ilikuwa inaitwa mwahea. Ukisikia mwahea, gari inaponyoka, ingine inazunguka pandi, ingine inazunguka pandi, ingine enda, nikaona imenisumbua.
Now that episode na Kimani Ngonjiri ni bamba sana, and wale wamewatch wanajua, ama if you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, I've actually shared bits of that interview, and one of my favorite is when he explained, Honorable Kimani Ngonjiri, by the way, when he explained the losses he made when he tried to venture in the Matatu business, which is very funny.
Nilifanya hiyo ya Eldoret na Nakuru.
Yes.
Nikafanya ya Nairobi, nikaona haileti faida kubwa.
Yes.
Nikafikiria nijaribu hii Mathili.
Sasa
ndio nijaribu Mathili. Nikaona tena hiyo is the worst. Iko na shida sana, not making anything. Kwanza niliumia kwa sababu nikabeba medio napeleka. Nikatafuta kijana moja kutoka kwetu kwa mashamba, nikamweka akuwe turn boy. Sasa yeye ajui kola ya town. Analipisha pesa. Akilipisha anaona mtu amemwangilia namna hii, anaona kama ni change, anamuuliza. Anaona ni kama change, anauliza. Anatoa pesa anampa. Na watu wanaobi ni nani? Anachukua tu. Ukikasia macho na mrei anaona ni kama hajakurudishia change. So I saw we are doing nothing. Namuliza tumebeba the whole day. Where is this money?
Na kwani kila mtu anajua kuka style, akijua huyu ni mgeni anamwangalia hivi.
Yeye anamwangalia namna. Sijui watu wanazobi kuangaliana namna hii. Sasa ni mtu wa kijiji. Sasa na mimi wakati nimepata dereva temporary, nikikaa nyuma naokota pesa. So namuuliza the same day, niliokota pesa hii. What happened?
Na ajaiba ukweli.
Ajaiba. Hata anakuwa na minus yeye nimpea change. Sasa nikaona hiyo kazi niwache.
Hiyo story you get kila time. Kimani Ngonjiri is a funny man, by the way. I don't think he realizes how funny he is in person. But now, the evolution of the transport industry inakuwa interesting sana, because sometimes the bus owners used to blackmail the government. So the government wanted to use matatus as a tool to neutralize watu wa mabasi. Mnafikiria you can strike and paralyze operations? We will deal with you. But matatus, I think, either was not enough, because again, tunapata the introduction of the Nyayo bus. And Nyayo bus, hapa ni in the 1980s, Moi, like, you will not believe there was a time Moi was so popular, like legit popular, hapa in the 1980s when they introduced the Nyayo bus. And the Nyayo bus is an interesting story, because waliona mahali hao mabus owners wanaleta noma, they got funding nini, waka introduce NYS into the picture, waka pump mabasi kwa market. So NYS wanabeba watu at 80% the fare, the other buses, and this was good because they did not have overheads. Drivers walikuwa wase people trained from NYS and stuff, and it was very, very nice. And then now wakakuja wakaeka Geoffrey William Griffin, retired Major Geoffrey Griffin in charge of the Nyayo bus. Na him alikuwa anajulikana na discipline sana, to the extent that by the trust vested in him by people he knew, they used to get funding, donor funding, grants from left, right and center. Transport ilikuwa imeshika. In fact, the Nyayo bus ilikuwa na a very, very interesting addition to it. Walikuwa mpaka na very good vibes, kama students wa shule would get free rides. And this was a very, very big game changer until players changed. So now kuna two things hapa: Griffin himself as a person, and when politics came to play. Let's start with when politics came to play. When after Nyayo bus imetengeneza pesa kidogo, one problem happens. Okay? Kuna buses zina represent very many routes, kwa sababu funding ilikuwa inakuja, kuna watu wa kudrive and stuff. There was a proposal to make the Nyayo bus into a parastatal, itolewe kwa National Treasury. Na hapa sasa ndio kuna makosa. In fact, Engineer Kiruki writes that the moment ilitolewa kwa Treasury, the numbers stopped making sense. Like the corporation could not survive. Like wase walikuwa naiba proper, and this is one of the things I don't know kama privatization hapa inakuja kukuwa na advantage or not. People, I believe inasemekana Engineer Kiruki Mwithibu writes that passengers used to watch crew members fight wakitaka kung'ang'ania pesa hiyo siku. Biashara ikishaanza hivyo, where is it going? And now here's a problem. Griffin himself alikuwa his hands were tied. Yes, he was retained kwa board, but he had no control. Politicians walikuwa, mtu anapiga simu anasema nataka basi place fulani. So kuna ile kuiba ya ground na kuna ile kuiba ya favors from president. Mtu anapiga state house aseme nataka shughuli fulani. You can't run a business like that. They run it down in 10 years. Like from peak success, and I believe it could have been possible, and I believe this was the opportunity to streamline the transport sector without stifling the opportunities that the Matatu industry has created. Walikula yote. Now, Engineer Kiruki Mudimbu writes something that ili tickle my philosophical love for concept and hypothesis. So apparently, Griffin did a great deal of service to this country. He is credited mostly for the creation of Starehe Boys. Lakini kwa historia kidogo ukirudi unapata he was in charge in his youth. He was in charge of Operation Anvil, which was the operation ya kuexterminate the Mau Mau fighters in the eastern slopes of Mount Kenya. So inamaanisha alitembeza watu proper. So now when you think about that for a bit, that hiyo inaita nodes zangu ama inaita appetite yangu ya good vibes na information na philosophy. If alikuwa in his youth, he was responsible for kudeal na Mau Mau fighters. Alright? So let's say kuna watu watasema he did wrong to this country because Mau Mau walikuwa na fight for what's theirs, okay? But now ukikuja, he creates Starehe Boys Center, which has been imecome through sana kwa orphans na less privileged children, and also imekuwa platform poa ya education. Imekuwa very big contribution to the Kenyan education sector. So on one hand, kuna scenes pande hii, alafu kuna hii pande ingine ya vitu mzuri amefanya zinaweza fanya his slate gets wiped clean. And I think that tickled my fancy because one of my favorite social psychologists, anaitwa Jonathan Haidt, introduces something. Anasema, when it comes to how we process good or bad, when the pain, anasemanga, the pain of losing money is greater than the joy of winning money or getting money. Alafu on top of that example, he goes further, anasema, like the compensation for a bad thing is higher than the compensation for a good thing. In this sense, like if someone kills one person, they would have to save 25 people or more to compensate for that. And I thought I would bring that to your attention. What do you think? Is there like what do you think about this concept of atonement? All right? Ulifanya vitu mbaya, but then umefanya vitu poa, wewe uko sawa. If someone came akwambie they've killed one person in their life, but they've saved 25. Do you think that balances the equation? Think about that for a bit. You can tell us in the comment section. But now, Griffin, from the jobs alikuwa nazo, but on principle, vile aliona how the Nyayo Bus Corporation was being run, aliquit. I think he didn't want to be associated with that. Now, when I play that scenario vizuri, something tells me that if vitu zingeacha zingefanywa without interference of politics, the story of the Kenyan transport industry would have changed. Mimi napiga tu highlights, yani the details in this book ni super massive. Matatu Madness by Engineer Kiruki Mudimbu, a story from the inside. By the way, I can put this on Everything I Love. It's a very, very interesting read, very detailed, and carries the whole story. But before we close, I have a very, very, there's another interesting thing I observed. This story, a concept here, being at the right place at the right time. Because when Matatu start coming through the evolution of from the Peugeot, mimi nasema Peugeot juu niligrow Embu, kuna watu wanasema ni Peugeot, but we'll go with Peugeot. The Peugeot zenye zilikuwa zinabeba watu, the Land Rover, the kinds of vehicles, all that details iko hapa. But there was an investor. Alikuwa anapeleka gari, ana operate kwa route ya kwenda Ukambani, Machakos. Jamaa anakuja anaangukia deal noma sana just because he had created a system. Who would have guessed that Kenyan banks can come and offer you an asset wakwambie, bro, wewe hata usilete do. we piga tu hii. How does that come about? That's the story of Julie's success. Mimi kwa hii kitabu nimepata a classic case of being at the right time, at the right place at the right time. And this hata acha tu nirifaa kwa kitabu. Unaona, kwa hii ni story ya Julie Success. Hiyo Nairobi Machakos route kulikuwa na matatu zinaitwa Julie Success. So now the writer, engineer Kiruki Mwidhimbo anasema, once upon a time there was a matatu operator who did the Nairobi Machakos shuttle with his small fleet of Peugeot 504s. He was slight in body but a very smart cookie. Hiyo ni description ya huyo investor. So now, new investors on the route found solace in his wise counsel, and many had his signature scrolled on documents that guaranteed them funding in banks. Like kumse hakuwa selfish. Like wale wasi wanataka kuingia kwa matatu, it's like he was very open to give them ideas, to share the process. Like niaje, mimi nilianza hivi, I went to the bank, nini. So I think he used to sign like guarantee other people vile wanaweza pata process vile yeye alianza. Mase, this comes to me, and naitwa Mzee Mwaura, like hakuwa mse selfish, hakuwa gatekeeper. Yeye alikuwa, yeye ata support kila mtu. I think this is the vibe, and you are about to find out why I think his selflessness paid out in the end. So now Mzee Mwaura, alias Julie Success, did not have much informal education. Again, tunarudi hapo, but he was the captain of many teachers and professionals from Machakos who ventured into the matatu industry. Yani, yeye alikuwa msewa, this is a business I'm doing, but I'm not gatekeeping. I'm opening up ropes for like wase wengine na kurecruit. And I think kwa hizo madocuments wase walikuwa na submit kwa loan, bank ilijiambia, by the uni nani. And I think pia, of course, statement. Now, here's where it comes to pay. Now, to the NIC bank. Unajua, kuna banka wa NIC alikaa kaona, by the way, hapa kwa matatu kuna opportunity. So, vile waliingia soko, guess who they land on? He was, to the NIC, Mzee Mwaura was a good catch. He was a respected pace setter in the industry. The bank, in conjunction with General Motors, was doing everything up to building the body. His part was only to receive the product when completed, to run it and pay the bank in very short terms. Like bank wanataka kupilot project na wanajiambia, industry kuna opportunity. Kuna mse ana move. Na huyu jamaa pia vile ana move, tunaona signature zake kwa documents zingine, like mse ni support. Of course, that comes with a disclaimer. Sio watu wengi wanaweza kuwa ati opportunity ndio hii unakuwa trusted uranayo. Mzee Mwaura wa Julie Success manzi alikuwa amesupport wase na bado kwa biz pia anajua game. So he does not even feel threatened at other people coming to join him in the industry. That particular case is it for me sana, which makes me beg the question. Unajua, my friend Robert Mwangi sent me an article, akasema Kenyan banking system inakuanga watu wa kuavoid risk, ni risk avoidance. Hao hawataki kumake risk. Wao wanatafutanga wameshika mashamba. In fact, collectively the top banks wako tu na mashamba, but hakuna like economy iflu. Are we past the era where bankers could take a chance on good ideas? Do you think such opportunities still exist in the market? Mimi, this for me is a classic case of service to humanity. Like, manze unago hard, as in, unajitambua kwa chenye unafanya, mpaka uogopi competition, uko willing kuropin wasi. Sijui kama this was possible because the opportunity, bado market ilikuwa young, you just start scratching the surface, ama Mzee Mwaura wa Julie Success alikuwa tu jamaa roho safi. Hey wadau manzi, I can barely scratch the surface of the good vibes, the history of the Kenyan transport sector, as well as it has been done kwa hii kitabu. I never scratch you surface. You just grab the book, Matatu Madness, a story from the inside, ya engineer Kiruki Mwidhimbo from the Nuria Store. Ingia tu Nuria Store, search Matatu Madness, order for the book. Mimi ni kuongea tu hapa kidogo ya the good vibes, the highlights of the things zenye nasikia zimenibamba. Iko mpaka na story ya gava vile ilikuwa inacheza politics ya kuplay matatu na matatu zingine. Like ni game of musical chairs, and you see the opportunities where we've left. Now, if you want to invest in the matatu industry, this is the guidebook. From us owning a single matatu to running a fleet, everything. Ameweka detail ya mpaka how much money you would expect to make, na ni facts, sio stories za jaba. Pia iko na space ya stories za jaba, mani stories za jaba za kukubamba tu za kufanya ufeel good vibes. Unasoma kitabu, iko na mpaka storytelling, iko na ma story interesting sana. Like I can guarantee you, I can put my name on it that you will enjoy reading this book kama you're into transport and you're into business. It is very well detailed. Kama umeikuwa na interest ya kuanza something in the transport sector, Matatu Madness, Story from the Inside is the book for you. You know where to get it from, Nuria Store. Now, tukiwa kwa hiyo tone ya biashara, unajua ni ngumu sana siku ishe kama hujaingia online. In fact, hata episode kama hii hauwezi watch kama hujaingia online at some point. Sasa tuachane na hiyo story at some point, tuende kwa point yangu ya hii video. Inaweza kuwa weird sana kama wewe unaweza kuwa unaingia online alafu unaacha biashara yako. Now in this day and age, manze, online presence ni kama basic need kwa biashara because it helps you meet your customers at the place where they spend most of their time. Alafu sasa gone are the days where you could say that, hey manze, kutengeneza online presence ni ngumu. Huwezi sema hivyo juu Udu wamecome through na are the easiest way you can get to own a world class e-commerce platform. Nitakwambia vile unaweza kuipata for free, lakini kwanza sinikwambie how easy it is to build one. Good vibes. Let's start with what is Odoo. This revolutionary software is a platform with over 45 apps you need to manage every need in your business. The Odoo e-commerce app inakuallow kuupload your whole catalog kwa biashara yako kwa website in just a few clicks. Alafu unajua, ukiimagine vile saa ingine kuandika text na description kwa product, saa ingine ulemea mtu, unachoka tu. But worry not, the new version ya Odoo inakuja na built-in AI features kama AI agents na AI assistants to help you through your creative process, kama coming up with creative captions for your product, drafting messages and emails to your potential customers within the app, and so much more. Building an Odoo e-commerce app pia haitaki sijui technical knowledge ya sijui ulienda ukasomea IT nini. Hapana, it's as simple as dragging and dropping blocks. In simple terms, ni kama kupanga shop yako online ikae vile inataka. Alafu the Odoo e-commerce inakuja na presets that look and feel designed to be appealing to your customer. What I'm saying is, when it comes to presentation game, umeshapangiwa. So wewe ni kuongeza tu test yako. Now here's the best part. The Odoo e-commerce app unaweza ipata free and for life, including hosting and support, as long as you choose it as your first app on the Odoo platform. Alafu, as your business grows, unaweza ongeza more apps on need basis, na hizi sasa unazipata na bei poa. Now what else are you waiting for, manze? Tumia hii link tumekuwekea kwa description ya hii video and try it out for yourself. More so the AI features. Trust me, utafurahia manze, alafu biashara yako pia itafurahia.